I can see why everyone is obsessed with this author. I can see why. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. Today I am filming my April wrap up. I cannot believe we are at the end of another month already. It's actually crazy. So without further ado, I am going to show you the books that I read in April. April for me has been an interesting reading month, to say the least. I went in with really high goals and expectations of myself, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be a really good reading month. And I have been in a slump for pretty much the whole month. Now, I have read some really, really good books, but I think my slump has affected the way that I felt about the books. I think some of these books I would have enjoyed a hell of a lot more had I not been in a slump. I definitely found a couple of new favourites this month. So the first couple of books that I read were arcs because they were being released in April and they were both very, very highly anticipated for me. So the first one that I read was Greenwich Park by Katherine Faulkner. This is a domestic thriller that follows our main character Helen throughout her pregnancy. So the book is separated into quite a few parts and each part is the next week of her pregnancy. So yeah, it was actually quite a unique format and I did really enjoy the way the book was split up. So we follow our main character Helen and the book begins and she is beginning antenatal classes and her husband hasn't made the antenatal classes and her brother is also supposed to be going with her with his fiance who is also pregnant, and none of them have showed up, so she is at this antenatal class on her own and the only person that is making conversation with her is this woman called Rachel. And from the off, Rachel just isn't a trustworthy character. Like, you just get bad vibes immediately. However, Helen befriends Rachel and it sort of goes from there. So this as a thriller does read really, really quickly, but I'm not sure it was for the right reasons. So I read this quite quickly, but I think it was because I was just awaiting more information. Like, nothing really happens, I have to say, for like a good 2/3 of the book. Basically, we are just following Helen's stupidity and Rachel's untrustworthiness. That's essentially it. I did enjoy it. I didn't hate it. I gave this 3 stars because Helen is just dumb. Like, I don't know. A lot of the book is based off of her friendship with Rachel and I just couldn't believe that she would allow the friendship to progress that much. Do you know what I mean? Like, any normal person would never have allowed it to get as far as it did. So that was like the one thing that really just made it not that enjoyable for me. And also, even though it's split up into like weeks of the pregnancy, the pacing felt really, really strange to me. So it wasn't my favourite thriller, I have to say, and I do think that if you enjoy domestic thrillers, this will be your bag. I don't read that many thrillers, so when I do, I really do expect to be thrilled, and sadly this one did not do that for me. Now, the next book I read was also an arc and it has immediately become a new favourite of mine, and it is Malice by Heather Walter. I've spoken about this in quite a few videos already, so if you have watched any of my previous videos, you'll know how much I loved this book. This book is essentially a Sleeping Beauty retelling where we follow the villain's backstory and it is just done so exceptionally well. So we follow our main character Alice, who is known as the Dark Grace. She has magic that is feared and it is the magic of her kind that has cursed the royal family and thus has cursed the princess. The Princess Aurora is the last remaining heir to the throne and she has 1 year until she has to break this curse, otherwise the curse will kill her. And Alice believes that if it's her magic that cursed Aurora, then it might be her magic that can save Aurora. It is an incredible retelling of Sleeping Beauty. It is very, very sapphic. It is just absolutely amazing. I gave this 5 stars. I genuinely couldn't fault it. The ending was one of the best endings I've ever read and I am just so beyond excited to get a sequel for this. If you love fantasy, if you love retellings, if you love lesbian characters, this book is definitely for you. I adored it. I can't fault it. Then I fancied reading something quite quick and quite easy, so I chose to pick up a novel in verse and I read The Crossover by Kwame Alexander. Now, this is a very short novel in verse and it's middle grade, I believe. It's just over 250 pages. If you've never read a novel in verse, it's essentially just in like poetry almost. So they read really, really quickly. And this follows two brothers who both play basketball, and their dad is an ex-pro basketball player. However, he had to stop due to an injury. And the brothers are quite competitive. They love each other, but they are quite competitive. And they've got a lot going on in their home life. Their dad is ill, and it just essentially, it's almost like a novella, like a snippet in their lives. It follows these brothers playing basketball and their feuds and their family life and how it all interweaves. It was written really, really well. I flew through it. I always do enjoy books in verse. I think it is because this one was so short that it isn't my favourite that I've ever read. I gave this a 3-star overall. I did really enjoy it, and sometimes my brain just needs the comfort of a book in verse because they do read really, really quickly. Then I had the privilege of being a part of 2 read-alongs hosted by Tandem Collective. If you don't know anything about that company, I'll link everything in the description. It's similar to book tours, but it works slightly differently. But Tandem are fantastic, and I always love it when I get the opportunity to take part in their read-alongs. The first one that I got to take part in was The Black Friend by Frederick. Now, this is a collection of essays that the author has written and interviews with prevalent black people about how to become an accomplice instead of an ally. And it is such an incredible read. I can't recommend this enough. This is a young adult essay collection, which I think is actually sometimes way more beneficial. Like, the way it's broken down, there was nothing to get confused about. Absolutely everything in this book is understandable and it sinks in, and it is phenomenal. I recommend this to absolutely everybody, even if you think you are already an accomplice, like I do. This book still taught me a hell of a lot, and the perspective of this author is something really, really incredible to read. Each one of these essays focuses on something different, and each one is equally as impactful. I didn't actually rate this, however, I absolutely adored it. And doing it in the style of a read-along, Tandem always give you question cards so you're able to reflect on what you're reading, and it really did make for a very, very impactful reading experience for me. And being able to discuss with fellow readers was also a fantastic opportunity, and it is definitely something that I will be coming back to in the future. Then I was lucky enough to have a spot open up for another read-along. Now, this one wasn't planned, so I had to add it into the TBR, but when I got offered a last-minute spot, I just could not say no, and it was for Firekeepers Daughter by Angeline Boulley. Now, if you didn't know, this is actually a Reese's Book Club pick, so I was incredibly excited to be offered a place on the read-along. This book has a lot of heavy trigger warnings, however, it truly is incredible. This was easily a 5-star read for me. Like, I read this towards the middle of April, and I'm still thinking about these characters and the plot and just how moving and impactful and incredible it was. Now, in this book, we follow our main protagonist, Dornis, and she is struggling with her identity. She has always felt like an outsider because of her mixed heritage. There are so many tribal elements in this book, and it is truly beautiful, and it made for such an incredible read. I loved that side of the plot and learning about Dornis's tribe. And basically in this book there are a lot of drug related deaths occurring, and Dornis is witness to a murder, and she reluctantly agrees to go undercover with the FBI to get to the bottom of these deaths. So there are a lot of trigger warnings in this book. It is quite a heavy read, especially for a YA, but I do think it was just stunning. Like, yeah, as I say, it was an easy 5-star. It's a thriller at heart, but then there's romance that is raw and honest, and Dornis is dealing with grief, and it's just so beautifully written. And then you've got the tribal elements and the identity elements, and it's just exquisite. Like, all of those things tied into this one story is something really, really special. And yeah, I feel very honoured that I got to take part in the read-along for this book. Then I fancied some fast-paced fantasy, and that is exactly what I got. So I decided to read the February Fairy Loot book, which was This Golden Flame by Emily Victoria, and this blew me away. I don't know what I was expecting, but like, this just took it up 10 notches. I absolutely loved it. So we're following our main character, Karis. On the island that she lives on, she is an orphan and she is under the scriptorium's thumb. She has to follow the rules, and basically they live in a society where automatons, which are like these giant robots, used to be under the scriptorium's control, but they all just died one day, and Karis finds an automaton and manages to wake him up. His name is Alex, and we get a dual perspective of him in the book. That's not a spoiler, it literally happens in like the second chapter, it's in the synopsis. And we follow them as Alex tries to uncover his past and Karis tries to find her brother, and it's just phenomenal. We meet a ragtag group of pirates, one of whom is non-binary. We deal with mental health issues in this book. There is fantastic disability rep. Karis, our main character, is asexual as well. Honestly, I absolutely loved this book, and the fact that it was standalone is kind of a disappointment to me. Like, I want more of these characters. I fell in love with them all. It wasn't the most developed plot I've ever read. It wasn't the most intricate book I've ever read, but it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it, and I gave this 4.5 stars. So it was definitely one of the high ratings of the month. Then I decided to read Ruinsong by Julia Ember. Now, this is a Phantom of the Opera retelling, which immediately intrigued me the second I found out that it was, and I really, really, really enjoyed this as well. So we're following our main character, Cadence, who has been gifted corporal magic. She can sing spells, essentially, and we've also got a dual perspective, who is Remy. So Remy and Cadence were actually best friends when they were children, and as they grew up, they were forced apart. So Cadence is now the Queen's personal song mage, and Remy, as a noble, isn't respected in society anymore. The Queen is totally against nobles, so she was forced out of the palace, and basically we come back into the story and Cadence is working for the Queen and doing a performing. So every year the Queen organises a performing where her personal mage sings a song to all of the nobles that is a dangerous spell, and Remy is in the audience, and that is how they reconnect. And it is essentially those two coming together to rebuild society, essentially, and to confront the corrupt Queen. So it was incredible. I mentioned this in my lesbian books video. As I said there, it wasn't hugely a Phantom of the Opera retelling, but it was enough for me. Like, I loved the elements that we saw of it. It was very cleverly done. And yeah, I really enjoyed these characters and this story, and I read this really, really quickly. It was just total escapism for me, and I gave this 3.5 stars. And lastly, the final book that I read in April was Loveless by Alice Oseman. Now, I actually started reading this quite early on in the month and then put it down and continued on towards the end of the month as an audiobook. I got on with it much, much better as an audiobook, I do have to say. So in this book, we're following our main character, Georgia War, and her friends, Jason and Pip, and they are just about to go to university. They're going to the same university, and it's essentially just following them coming to terms with the university and fitting in and making friends. And essentially Georgia is struggling to find where she fits. She has never fancied anyone, she's never had a crush, and she goes to university and she's never kissed anyone before, and she thinks she's weird, and she goes on a night out and all she wants to do is kiss someone, and she makes a new friend, Rooney, who is actually her roommate, and Rooney is on a mission to get Georgia a boyfriend, and Georgia is just questioning herself for the main first third of this book. It really is a lovely, lovely story of self-discovery and friendship and heartbreak, and it's just phenomenal. I haven't reviewed this properly yet, but I will say, like, it's the kind of book that I really wish that I'd have read when I was 16, 17, 18. I can appreciate how it is so, so important, and I did really, really enjoy the story. It just didn't hit the way that it definitely would have like 4 years ago. I feel like a lot of people can relate to that with Alice Oseman. She's definitely the kind of author that I wish I'd have had at the age group that it's aimed at. So I did give this 3 stars. I read this for the Rainbow Readers book club pick, and a lot of the people reviewing it are giving it 4 or 5 stars, which is amazing to see. I'm so happy that the majority of people are enjoying it. For me, I don't know if it was because of my reading slump, but I did struggle to get through it. I loved the themes and I loved the characters, but the actual plot itself wasn't my favourite. It did fall a little bit flat for me. I basically carried on reading because I was loving George's journey, and the asexual representation was a really important read, so I did enjoy it. It just definitely wasn't my fave. So that concludes my April wrap up. I did read a total of 8 books this month. I feel like I've read a good mix of a lot of genres and a lot of topics, and yeah, I feel like I had a good reading month. Let me know down below in the comments what your favourite book was that you read in April, and if you've made it this far in the video, leave a pink love heart for Loveless. If you did like this video, it would mean the world to me if you did like it, and if you could consider subscribing to my channel. I do post bookish content regularly, and I have some really fun videos coming up, if I do say so myself. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!